another quote in a recorded conversation. So she too has stated one thing here and the opposite there. Similarly, with the ArriveCan $54 million scandal, we see the government saying things that contradict the facts. They released a document to the House of Commons saying that Think On Inc. had received a $1.2 million contract for experimentation of mobile QR scanning. Yet the CEO said yesterday he never got any money. In fact, they don't even work in the field. So if his company didn't get the money, who did?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Matters. Obviously, the government ensures that contracts are handed to the highest standards. There are questions about this contract that are being looked at. Certainly, we want to make sure there are answers. But I will say, Madam Speaker, that what we did when the country was in a situation of crisis, when the opposition was calling for the border to be closed, is ensure that we brought forward an app that allowed the movement of people safely during that crisis. And that is something that worked and was extremely effective, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Making somebody rich. We just don't yet know who. So the government released a document in the House of Commons saying that Think On Inc. got $1.2 million in ArriveCan contracts. Yesterday, the CEO said, we have received no money from the CBSA. He further said, we're not even remotely in that space. In other words, they don't even do the work that was paid for. So this company did not get the $1.2 million. Two questions. Who did get the money, and where is it now?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, CBSA is looking into this matter. They're aware of concerns with respect to the contract. I can assure the honourable member opposite that in all matters with respect to contracts that we adhere to the absolute highest standards and demand those standards in every interaction that the government interacts in. But again, I will point out, Madam Speaker, the imperative nature of the action that the ArriveCan app was able to facilitate. We were in a situation where the opposition was calling for the border to be closed. We wanted to make sure that Canadians could travel safely. We introduced an app that facilitated that in a time of crisis and made sure that Canadians could travel.
Honorable député de Saint-Jean.
Madame la Présidente, Radio-Canada révèle...
Madam
Speaker, the newly released audio recordings of the RCMP Commissioner confirms that the Minister pressured the Commissioner to release sensitive information about the ongoing investigation into the worst mass killing in our history. Wow. By requesting this information be released to further the Liberal political agenda, the Minister politically interfered in the RCMP investigation and he misled a parliamentary committee about it. For this, the Minister must resign. Will he resign today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I will restate this really important principle because I think it's worth repeating, that in our democratic part of the system, politicians do not interfere in police operations or police investigations. At no point did our government instruct anyone to release any information because we would never violate the sacrosanct principle of interfering in a police investigation or police operation, as was the case in this circumstance.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
The former Minister of Public Safety misled a parliamentary committee on the record, Madam Speaker. He said he was not aware the Commissioner would release sensitive information, and he said he never asked her to reveal that information. But both claims are now proven to be completely misleading with the new audio recording. Worse yet, the Minister knew the release of this information would jeopardize the investigation into the worst mass killing in Canadian history, and this was all for Liberal political gain, Madam Speaker. He must resign today. Will he resign?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, at no point did our government attempt to direct or otherwise interfere the police operations that was taking place in that tragic incident that took place in Nova Scotia. And let me re-quote what the Commissioner said in a parliamentary committee on July 25th of this year. She stated, Speaker, let me be clear, I did not interfere in the investigation, I did not receive direction, and I was not influenced by government officials regarding the public release of information, and more importantly, on the direction of the investigation. I ensured that operational independence...
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Commissioner Lucky told the Nova Scotia RCMP that she wanted the details of the makes and the models of the weapons used in Canada's most deadly mass shooting released. Why? Because the minister pressured her to do so. We know they spoke about it. He knew it would jeopardize the investigation, but the minister had legislation coming, and this was part of a communications exercise for him. It was not about the investigation, the victims, or public safety. He played politics with a mass shooting investigation. What time today will he resign?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the independence of police operations is a key principle in our democracy and one that our government deeply respects. At no time did our government attempt to interfere in police operations. That has never taken place. It's a sacrosanct principle of our democracy, and we'll always live by it.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, in an accountable of an RCMP commissioner working with a minister to cover up the politicization of the biggest mass killing in Canadian history would result in immediate resignation. Not only did the minister mislead the House about knowing what we've all heard on tape, the minister was advised that releasing this information would jeopardize the investigation, and he asked for it to be done anyway. He put politics above the safety of Canadians and then covered it up. So what time today will he resign?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, what happened in Nova Scotia by way of that mass shooting is an absolute tragedy. Innocent people lost their lives. Our focus has been to ensure that through this inquiry,
Can we listen to the answers the same way we listen to the questions, please? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Our focus, Madam Speaker, has been through the inquiry to make sure that we learn the lessons from how to prevent such mass shootings ever to take place in any part of Canada. That investigation was led by the RCMP. The government did not interfere in that investigation, but because that is a fundamental principle of our democracy, politicians do not interfere with police operations.